This is the Sony 11mm f1.8. Now, when you decide to buy a prime lens, you already know that you're most likely going to get a lens that is really good in low light and also has the ability to create a really nice, good shallow depth of field as well. But you also know that when you buy a prime lens, you are going to have to sacrifice that versatility because you have a set focal range. Now, I don't really feel like that is the case with this lens, because even though this lens is a prime lens, I don't feel like you lose out on versatility with a fixed focal length, because this lens can be used in so many different scenarios. Now I'm going to go ahead and explain all of that at the end of this video, but before we go ahead and do that, let's just break this lens down, review it a little bit and see what it has to offer. But first things first, my name is Niclas, and if you're new to this channel, hello and welcome. And also I would highly appreciate it if you decide to smash that like and subscribe button. So starting off with the build quality of this lens. Now the first thing you're going to notice when you hold this lens is that it is extremely light and it's very small, so it only comes in at 180 grams. At the same time, this lens is only barely 6 centimeters long as well. So this lens is very stealthy and small, and it's the perfect candidate for any sort of gimbal work because of that. Now this lens has also a very plasticky feel to it. It does have a plastic focus ring at the front here, but at the same time the weather sealing on this lens is actually pretty good. It does have a rubber gasket at the back here, and the filter thread size on this lens is 55 millimeters. And lastly, this lens does not have an aperture ring, but what it does have is a manual focus switch, and it also has a focus hold button as well. Alright, so let's talk about something a little more interesting: image quality. To start off, I have to say this lens delivers amazing sharpness, all the way from f1.8 up until f11. Even in the corners, you will find really good performance in terms of sharpness, but you won't get the same sharpness as you do get in the middle of the image. But in a real life scenario, this is hardly noticeable. And the same thing can be said about the contrast. The contrast is really good as well. Now another standout feature of this lens is its incredible close focus distance of just 12 centimeters. And honestly, this is my favorite aspect of this lens. And the same here for close distance sharpness. It's really good, amazing details. So just to conclude, this lens just offers fantastic image quality in terms of sharpness and everything. Yeah, I really like this. Alright, so let's touch on bokeh for a second. Now this is a super wide angle lens, and bokeh isn't really what you think of when you think of this lens, but it does have the ability to create a fairly nice shallow depth of field here. Now in the middle of the frame we have some bokeh balls, and then we have some more in the back here, but let's look at this one in the middle first. As we can see, they do suffer from the cat eyes and they are out of shape. If the distance gets fairly long, we can see that in the background we get much smoother rounded balls. But if we look in the corners, we can see that we do get the cat eyes again. Alright, so touching on vlogging. Now, this lens is one of the best vlogging lenses out there in my opinion. So first here, I'm testing it with this my ZV-10 Mark II. No IBIS, no electronic stabilization, and then I'm swapping over to electronic stabilization, which will give you a crop factor of 1.33, and this will give you an equivalent of 14.63 if my math is correct, and it is extremely good, it's very stable, looks really good in my opinion. Nothing to say about this except it's really nice. Also did test it on my ZV-E1 full frame. I am using something called Super 35 mode here. This crops in about 1.5, so this will give you equivalent of 16.5 millimeters for the field of view. And I did also put on dynamic active stabilization, and again here, if my math is correct, it should be around 24.75 millimeters in terms of the field of view. Looks really stable and really good here as well. Very solid. Now for the autofocus, it's really good, quiet, fast, responsive, but there was one time at f1.8 that it did take a couple of seconds before the eye tracking to kick in. But overall, a very solid performer here as well. In terms of focus breathing, there's not really much to discuss because this lens is so wide anyway, so it's hardly noticeable. But again, as well, Sony's cameras today, most of them offer breathing compensation for these kinds of stuff anyways. So at the start of this video, I said that this lens is a very versatile lens, even though it has a set focal range of 16 millimeters. So what do I mean by that? The obvious use case for this lens is going to be wide landscape shots or astrophotography, or architecture or something like that. That is the first thing that pops to mind when you think about, you know, a super wide angle lens like this. But in my opinion, this lens has so many other areas that it really shines. So for vlogging, for example, I think that this lens is one of the best options you can really find out there in terms of vlogging. Even if you're using full frame, you can use something called Super 35 where it crops in. Also, if you have a YouTube studio, I think it is the perfect studio lens as well. And also another area where it really shines is going to be B-roll. Because this lens has such a great minimal focus distance and it can open up all the way to f1.8 and it's really sharp. It's a superb lens in terms of shooting B-roll as well. So just to sum this lens up, it is the perfect B-roll lens, it is the perfect lens for a studio setup, I think it is the perfect lens for landscape or astro or architecture, it is the perfect vlogging lens. Also, it is a perfect travel lens, it doesn't weigh anything, extremely light, it's small, you can just basically just throw this in your pocket and you won't even notice that you have it. Also, if your camera has clear image zoom as well, you can get a lot out of this lens. So there you have it. I think this lens is a fantastic lens and I highly recommend it. Alright, thank you so much for watching, guys. Please don't forget to smash that like and subscribe button before you leave. Take care and have a good one.